Jewish halacha. So I feel sorry for such a person who missed his opportunities. He's missing them. He's persistent. And he's justifying, rationalizing his position and saying everybody else is doing something like this too. So therefore I can do it. That a rationalization. It's a tragedy to see a person that has opportunity to not take advantage of the opportunity. It's a great tragedy. My heart bleeds for such people. I find that it is sometimes very intolerable to even dwell upon the subject that these people are self-destructing themselves. And for no good reason. The time that they're here, the limited amount of time we're here, we can be doing so many wonderful things. We can be doing so many mitzvahs. We can learn so much Torah. We can do proper things in the eyes of God. We can avoid doing improper things. We can act in a proper manner. We can have proper mannerisms. We can show proper acts of kindness to our fellow human being. We can do all the wonderful things that we should be doing. And instead of that, just doing what you rationalize to do, it's not a rational act. It's not a rational act. It's an act of insanity. It's an act of committing suicide. And it's definitely against the halacha to commit suicide. There was a story told, it's a joke, of course. There was one man that was determined to violate every law that he could in Torah. So he systematically found out what the laws were, and each one he tried to intentionally violate. So he came with his big list and his missed accomplishments to a great rabbi. And he said, Rabbi, he says, I want you to check it. Maybe I missed something that I could do wrong and I haven't done yet. And the rabbi looks pretty, a very full list. There's one more thing you have to do and you'll have a complete list. Oh, please stop. He says, it's against the job of the law to commit suicide. Then you have a yeah, everything. You see, unfortunately, people are self-deluding themselves. That's ridiculous. If you want to drive a car, so you don't go niceties, get a driver's license, learn how to drive a car or anything. What do you need all that? You got money, you buy a car, you get in the car, how do you start it? How do you stop it? No problem. Go and you go. So what's happening? If sooner or later you hit something. I remember, I'm a lawyer. I had a case like that. There was a lady that was unfortunately living with another man without the benefit of marriage. So her boyfriend was asleep. She took his keys to his car and she drove the car. She never drove a car in her life before. So what happened? She hit a garage. So what did she expect? She might have hit a human being. Thanks God she didn't kill anybody. Didn't kill herself, kill somebody else. So they come to court. And the other person claimed his car was parked in the garage, and she had wrecked the car. Now she was suing her in court. I was defending the boyfriend and her in court. The attorney wanted another continuance after it was a final already. We had in chambers the judges, the two lawyers, and he says I got to have a continuance because I don't have an occurrence witness, one that saw the accident. I says, if that's all you need, I'll stipulate. If my client doesn't specify under oath that she drove the car and hit the garage, then you can have a continuance. That's the only thing that's stopping you from it. He says, okay. All right. So you go there. She testifies. I asked her a question. I says, did your co-defendant, did he give you permission to use his car? No. He was asleep. All right. Then he was off because he didn't authorize it. What did you do? I took those keys. What did you do? I drove his car. What did you do? I hit the garage. Under oath. I said, what did you do then? I got out of the car. What did you do then? She said, I looked in the garage. And what did you see? It was an empty garage. So she didn't hit anything. So I won the case. So there, again, if you drive without proper preparation, in this case, your life is at stake. And your life in the world to come is at stake. Is that something to take chances with? You want to take a chance against not going to heaven? Would you prefer to go to the other place? Is this some kind of an option that you want to choose? You want to choose do this or do that? There was a joke there about Jack Benny. There was a gangster said, your money or your life. He was portraying you as a cheapskate. So he didn't answer for a moment. He said, thank you. It's the same thing. Your life life is very short. You drink a karun and it's nachnila. It's over before you even know it's begun. The first years, in the formative years, and you make your Sarah mistakes. Then when you get older, you're supposed to learn from them. A lot of people keep on repeating them over and over again until finally they get acclimatized and doing improper things. And so this is my lifestyle. I do it for the day until they finally die. So what have they gotten out of their life? Nothing. Everything is empty. And why should a person miss an opportunity? The Chofetz Chaim was one of the great sages we had, passed away in 1933, was considered the greatest Talmud scholar of his generation. He compared it to a case where a person was in a place where there were all kinds of precious jewels all around, and you can pick it up and you can have it. Those that knew the value of it would pick it up. Those that didn't do anything about it. The same thing. We have precious jewels here. Every mitzvah we do, we create a good angel, according to some authorities in the Gemara, that will speak good for us in heaven. Because remember, you daven on Yom Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, if there's one angel out of 1,000 who speak good for you, that God should not give you an evil decree. Now, these are the angels that you create by your good action. So if a person works on it, you can create an awful lot of angels. Of course, you don't work on it, you got not much to show for yourself. That's the same thing. It's ridiculous a person should be his own worst enemy. Which a lot of people are prepared to be your enemy. You don't have to go and do it. It's important that a Jew take opportunities to do mitzvahs. It's important, the most important thing of your life. If it's important for you to breed, it's important for you to do mitzvahs. It's important for you to learn Torah. It's important for you to come to shul on a steady basis. This is your life. If you don't do these things, you are destroying yourself. And is that a sane act? No way. That should not be emulated. No way. Is there any questions? You understand? You understand the seriousness of this thing. We're playing not for games. We're playing for our whole life. Our life and the world to come. Fortunately, God has given a tremendous thing to us. Every Jew, because of virtue of the fact we accepted upon ourselves the responsibility to observe God's laws, He has given every Jew a potential to go to heaven after he lives this life. But that can be messed up. All of us have a potential. The Gemara says each one of us has potential, one to go to heaven or to go to the other place. It's called Gehenna, hell. Now, if you work on it, you can get a potential to go to heaven. If you don't work on it, you go to the other place. If you do a real good job, not only do you earn one just entry into heaven, you earn a higher position in heaven, the more job you do. And he talks about Avraham Avinu, that he said did such a wonderful job. Avinu Bartanura says in the 5th chapter in Avos, he did such a wonderful job that he earned all the credits that 10 generations of all mankind were theoretically able to earn. One man earned that much credits in heaven. This boggles the mind. You are capable of becoming a great person in every sense of the word. I'm not, God forbid, meaning the individuals here at this table. I am sure that all of you are wonderful people. But a person is capable of becoming even greater than he is, provided he has direction in his life. It's just like when you want to go from New York to Chicago. You can just go and drive, or you can look at a road map. It's much better to look at a road map. You see which way is the proper way to go to get there. You can just drive. You might have to go in someplace else, and someplace else not in New York. And that's not a proper way of doing it. Thanks God has set out the course of action that we have right here with the Torah, the Gemara, the Talmudic law tells us exactly what we're supposed to do. All we have to do is do it. We have to learn it so we know we have to do it, and then do it properly. We don't have to be crazy and be our own worst enemies. We can make ourselves righteous people in the highest form of the word. We can make ourselves a source of joy to God, to our fellow human being, to everybody. We can become a great, righteous people. We are Am Kodesh, a holy nation. We are a very special people in the eyes of God because we accept on ourselves responsibility to serve God, to do His commandments. So there's no reason in the world that we should settle for anything less than the best. In view of the fact that the Chazal tells us in many places, I've learned this many times, if you constantly strive to do the right thing in the eyes of God, even if many times you don't do the right thing, the mere fact that you want to do the right thing, and if you're boxed out of doing the right thing, for some reason beyond your control, God gives you credit as though you did it all. So you don't have to be the greatest genius in the world. You want it to be. You don't have to be the greatest tzaddik in the world, but you want it to be. And you did everything in your power to become. You get credit as though you did it. Well, that's fair. Very fair indeed. God's going to pay you even if you didn't do it. I think that's a very wonderful arrangement. You get paid salary and bonuses and more bonuses on top of all that. This world to come. Very generous. Absolutely. No question about it. No more question about it. The Gemara talks about, in the earlier generations, perhaps they couldn't understand it. But we have a Gemara that says that God gives you an instant recall in the entire life after 120 years. Now you know it right away. Common knowledge, of course. You've got to have instant replay. Yeah, and that's done. See, when you learn the Gemara, which came from God, of course, knew all these things are going to be. So He's telling you at that time, you'd say, how could this possibly be? Today, you wouldn't even question it. Of course. I understand that. That's within my experience. This is the thing. We're not playing games. We're playing for keeps. And if we're playing for keeps, we got to act like we're playing for keeps. Nobody's going to go and push you into heaven if you don't want to go. You prefer to go to the other place? Never. That is not the place. We have a medrash that says that the Pharaoh Melech Mitzrayim stands at the gates of hell, and he says to every person that's going there, he says, why didn't you profit from my example? What's the whole machine? A person has to be his own worst enemy. We decry it. We say it's terrible when a person is on drugs or he drinks himself an early grave by alcoholic liquor. We say it's a terrible thing. It's not a horrible thing for a person to lose all the opportunities that God gives us. He gives us so many, it's unbelievable. Horror. Any place you turn, there's things that could be done better. Tikkunim, making things better. That should be our challenge. That should be our activity. We should be wonderful people. We should be wonderful Jews. We should do mitzvahs. I know, Harvey, you go to these hospitals and you cheer up these little children. And you want to do it all the time. There's no problem with you there. Nobody has to drag you out of the house. You must go. You drag yourself. You're self-motivated. It's the same thing with all the other mitzvahs. That's not the only mitzvah in the world. Everyone, you've got to be self-motivated. You've got to understand. This is the time. This is the opportunity. If not now, when? And unfortunately, by the time people get around to doing it, you've lost the opportunity. So what's the big deal? You want to do something, you can't move. Emphasis gate doesn't work the way it used to. When you're a younger man, you can work 20 hours a day, no problem. You have 2 hours of sleep, work another 20 hours, no problem. Today, you sleep 20 hours, you're lucky if you can work 4 hours a day. You've got a problem. And the 4 hours, you got to take a break from time to time. And it's hard to get out of bed. And it's hard to walk. It's dust taking it. And this doesn't work. Then you got to go to a doctor. And the doctor will finally say to you, listen, you're getting older. What do you expect? And they say, you get all this. So you have to go through all this trauma and all this mishagas. Get the message. You can still do something about it. Baruch Hashem, the Rabbi Shalom is the Rabbi Shalom. Rabbi Shalom is prepared to go and accept us even in our horrible record up to this point. Okay? Let bygones be bygones. From now on, do it. Don't go around dragging your heels. Now that you got the message, act on it. It should not be necessary for me to call any of you to come to shul any day of the week. Not one iota. The proof of the pudding is, unless, God forbid, I'm lying flat on my bed, or I'm out of the city, I'm in shul here, every single night, or I can't make it for some reason. More times than not, I'm in the shul. I'm not saying something that's true. That's not true. There's people that could say, oh, Rabbi Friedlander, you're exaggerating. That's not so. But I don't take any credit for it. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. If I teach you Torah, I'm supposed to be doing that. Yochanan Zakkai learned the entire Torah. And he said, you shouldn't take extra credit for it. That's what you're credited for. You do mitzvahs. That's what you're supposed to be doing. What is this all about? You have to get a claim. You know, nowadays, when a person gets wealthy, the only way you can get some bucks from him, you have to have a big banquet honoring him. For what? He should be giving it without being honored. You're supposed to honor God. Where do you get this honor business? If a person has a lot of wealth, he has a tremendous responsibility. If he utilizes that wealth not for a proper purpose, he is flunking his exam with God. And most people I know that's got a lot of wealth are flunking miserably. I don't envy their latter end. And so therefore, whatever happens to us, we have to keep clarity in our understanding. You must serve God with your thoughts, with your speech, with your action. And it's got to be a complete service on your own. Let's learn a little more. Gentlemen, we're on Gimel Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. On Gimel Amud Beis, it's Amud Beis. Gimel on the second side. You remember we discussed, yesterday I told you I would cover it this week. Does that answer your question?
Very well said.
No, I don't need a clade. I'm talking Amos. No, but you knew this before. You knew this before I told you this. You didn't really know. I knew it before. I mean, you didn't know it?
You talk to the kids daily.
You can do it too. God's an equal opportunity. He'll accept your prayers too, if you're sincere. But you got to be sincere. That's what He doesn't accept prayers from a person that's not sincere. Because if a person comes to God and acts like God's got to do it for him, it's not going to work out. We said like this. We had learned, the rabbis had said that in the ancient times, in the times of Ezra Sefer, when they repopulated Zion because of the Zionist proclamation issued by Cyrus the Great, so Ezra Sefer brought in with him the pioneers to rebuild Zion, to rebuild Israel. And he made decrees. Among the decrees is that they should have a Beis Din sitting on Monday and Thursday. Like the decree, for instance, we read the Sefer Torah on Monday and Thursday. So and there shouldn't be 3 days going without Torah being read in the synagogue. That's one of his decrees. He and his Beis Din. Ezra Sofer was the Kohen Gadol. And when the Second Temple was finally built and dedicated. And he was also a prophet. So he made a decree, among other things, that we should go and have a wedding always on Wednesdays. Why Wednesdays? Because they used to go and give bigger marriage ceremony rites to a virgin lady that became a bride. And they wanted that the Jewish girls should have a nice wedding. And they gave 3 days to prepare the wedding, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And on Wednesday, they would have the wedding. And then they would consummate, the bride and groom would consummate the marriage Wednesday night, which is, and on Thursday morning, if there was any complaints that she had defrauded him, she was not a virgin, he would come to the Beis Din and present his case to the Rabbi. At any rate, if there was some accident that occurred, the rabbis permitted people to get married even earlier, even 2 days earlier on Monday as well as on Wednesday. So the Gemara talks like this. The boy say, if you want to say Rai Machmas honest, what does it mean? What kind of accident we're talking about? The Sanya said, that's what's given by the same man that contributed to it. The Mishnah is the Torah Shabbat. It explains what the halacha is. And the Gemara explains what the Mishnahs mean. The Gemara and the Mishnayos make up the Talmud. And this is the law of God. Every word that we're learning here is the law of God. And you should understand this. We're learning something that is as holy as the Sefer Torah itself. It's a part of the law of God. In Sanya, we're learning the Brisa. His bread was baked. The wedding was, just like nowadays, people haven't changed. The wedding is a great expense. If you don't go through with a wedding and you go through a great expense, God knows if you can ever go and have another wedding. Because who can afford to have this great expense more than once for individuals? So we're talking about a young couple, and they got the wedding all prepared. What happened? The bread is baked. All right, it's going to be, if you don't postpone the wedding, then you can't eat the bread anymore. The Tobo to go out, and they had slaughtered the animals. That's a big expense. Those days it was very expensive to have animals slaughtered. Presumably they had a big wedding. Bazooka and his wine had been mixed with water. Those days the wine, like now, today, we can't drink the wine as it's grown. As it's grown, it's too strong to drink. They dilute it with water and other things, other liquids. The wine we drink today is diluted with water in order to be able to drink. If it is not diluted, it has a staying power. But once it's diluted, it has to be drunk within a very short time, otherwise it loses its taste as wine. Because the wine had been mixed up with water and everything. And then what happens? Unfortunately, this happens from time to time. The father of the groom has a heart attack. He dies right there at the hollow, or the mother of the bride. From time to time, unfortunately, they get so excited. And these are the prime movers of the wedding. The father of the chassan, he's supplying the money, and the mother of the bride, she's supplying preparing for the. And if they are gone, nobody's going to go and prepare the wedding. So we have a tremendous responsibility here. What are we as the Rabbi supposed to do now? If we postpone the wedding, and we have to bury the dead, like I mentioned you before, we have to bury the dead as soon as possible, availing, a mourner. And a mourner is not supposed to get married, at least not in the first 7 days of his mourning. If you postpone the wedding, all the food is wasted. So what are you supposed to do? This is a very real problem. This is what the Brisa says. We put the dead body in a separate room. And we marry a young couple right away at this point. We got to have that done, because otherwise the wedding will never go through again. I know it sounds, who's got a heart for it, but we got to be practical about this. You're not going to be practical about it, it's not going to happen. Who's going to prepare for that? Milas mitzvah, and he has the first section of the course with her in the privacy of his room, and then Uporish, he separates from her. He doesn't live with her anymore sexually. Then we bury the dead person. Now what does happen? They first celebrate the 7 days of the wedding feast. Once the bride and groom have been married and the marriage is consummated, they are now considered like a Yom Tov, or by them, a holiday. And in a holiday, you don't have public display mourning. And then after that, you have the 7 days of mourning, where they sit and mourn. So the first 7 days you celebrate the wedding feast, and they have from time to time they have Shiva Brochas again, Shmonim Chadoshes. New people come in and they sit down in a meal and they say the Brochas over again. And that's for the whole week after the wedding. Yeah. I have to tell you a halacha. Here's a halacha. When a person dies, when a Jewish person dies, the near relatives that have to mourn him according to the halacha are not considered mourners yet. You hear what I'm saying? They're not an oval, but they're an onan. Onan is a status that is not a mourning status. Therefore, in Jewish law, it's not appropriate to have a wake where you comfort the survivors of the dead person, because the body has not yet been buried. And the obligation to mourn this dead body is not yet applicable on those relatives. They're not officially speaking, mourners. They have a different status. And as such, the status usually starts when there is the burial. And after the burial, you'll notice you've been in a Jewish funeral, they have two rows of people that came there, and then they start comforting the mourner. At that point starts the mourning period. Yes.
When you say they don't bury the man at the wedding?
After the wedding ceremony and after the bride and groom had lived together, at that point they buried the dead body.
When you said that you must be buried,
Immediately within 24 hours.
do all this in 24 hours, and then bury the
How long does it take to get through the wedding? I don't know what kind of weddings you've been at, but a wedding goes through in a half an hour. For them, that's a good question. It depends who are the chief mourners. We follow the lead of the chief mourner. If the chief mourner is the bride or groom, then they follow the lead of them. Otherwise, presumably, they would mourn them right away after the burial. But it follows the lead of the chief mourner. Whatever the chief mourner does, that's what it follows. But during these 14 days, the bride and the groom don't live together sexually. Because although public display of mourning, there is private of not living together with your spouse. That is even done on a day when you wouldn't have a public display. For instance, on Shabbat, a person in the first week after wedding the mourner is not permitted to show public display of mourning. But in the privacy of his home, he's not supposed to have sex with his wife either during that whole week. Yes.
So we don't start the 7 days of the mourning period until the body is actually going into the ground.
There's two opinions. We'll learn that on Dalit on the base. One opinion says once you give up hope of burying the body, that's another way of starting the mourning period. Or another, once you close.
They usually have services in the chapel ahead of time. The body is there in a coffin, and they have services, and then they go to the cemetery.
Yeah.
But people come up to, they sit in the front, and people come up and comfort the whole family.
Absolutely wrong. It's against the law. Absolutely wrong. Not to be
And not only her, but they charge.
especially the whole thing and have a graveside burial. It's a ridiculous thing. The first place we learn, and we will learn in the Ches on the days in this Gemara, the Gamliel, because there was a scandal. One poor person ran away rather than have the expense. He decreed that from now on, himself, when he dies, he'll be buried with the most frugal things, no big expense and anything. That's not lawful. We're not supposed to spend a lot of metal ornate things. The whole thing is against the law. You're supposed to go and do it in a dignified way, but not as a station or anything like that, outdoing everybody. It's not a problem. Yeah, they're perfect. All these things are not appropriate. Consider this. The young couple, if they don't have the wedding, no, what do you mean understand? You understand or you do understand? They don't go to wedding now. God knows if they ever get married. This is a tragedy. You're going to go and make a tragedy because you have sensibilities. You're the only one that has sensibilities. The dead body will be buried. But you've got to consider the living. You can't let them go and throw them away because you had somebody die. This is a situation that occurs, God forbid. What's the double standard? When I say need, I mean within reasonable time. 24 hours is usually time, reasonable. You can't do it immediately. You got to make arrangements. You can't do it immediately. You got to let people know that the wedding's there. There's got to be enough time for them to get to the funeral. So it can't be done immediately. What I'm saying is a reasonable amount of time. 1 day or 2 days at the most. You get this all done. But it doesn't mean literally. Is he dead? Put him in the ground. No, it doesn't mean, no, don't, excuse me, I don't mean to imply that that is the way to do it. In the first place, make sure he's dead. Cold. Whatever it is, okay. All right, now, I get the floors now. That's good. I'm getting my celebration. Look at Rashi, gentlemen. Let's look at Rashi, a little part we learned. Where the Rashi bosses out to the Sanya, like we learned in the Brisa, costs about 8 lines from the bottom on Rashi, on Gimel and Beis. Yeah. Where it's broader. The Rashi is broader, the inner column. The Sanya, like we're in the Brisa. Chosim, Shemeis Hobi, meaning the Chosim, the groom that his father died on the 2nd day of the week, cannot wait until the morrow. Because he's dead. Got to go arrange for we have to keep delaying the dead body being buried until they get married. We have to delay, and we have to get this marriage out. Yener Moser is wine is mixed up with wine with water. Shahoyer Roy is steel. They'll be now be fit to be drunk. This time, no longer will it be able to have staying power because it's now diluted. The father of the groom, Kakalo, or the mother of the bride, Davka. These are the principal characters in the Noka. The father of the Triya, he's bartering with preparing the wedding feast. You know, there's all expense. And the mother of the bride, he loved, and she can keep preparing the oak chest and everything else, the linens and everything for her daughter. Therefore, the appointed time to get married is going to pass. There'll be nobody else prepared for them. So therefore the Rabbanim, sages, permitted them the process of Meishmacheder to put the dead body temporarily in a separate room. So you can rule not to bury it immediately. Because if you buried it immediately, there would become the mourner would become officially a mourner. Once it's buried, it's officially a mourner. The stigma holding of the top grave, it'll come, like later on we'll learn. The Shuv Lo Yochel L'Konis, and no longer will be able to get married. Until the period of mourning has passed. On top of the page. So what do? You marry them off, you put the dead body in a separate room, you marry him off, and he consummates marriage and punishes, and then he separates, you cover as a mace miyad, and then you bury the dead person immediately. The kibbutz, the challah, once the bride and groom have accepted on themselves, they've already married, having the gabay in relation to them, to Yom it's a holiday. Once it's a holiday, you can't become a mourner on a holiday. No longer can the mourning period come, challah, and have complete fixing on that day. But so therefore, you still first have the 7 days of the wedding feast, then after the 7 days, then you have the 7 days of the mourning. In all these days, both the 7 days of the wedding feast, and also the next 7 days of the days. He sleeps among the men, and she sleeps among the ladies. They are not alone together in a room alone during these days. Shemi Yavor, because he might have sex with her again. And a mourner, although he's not publicly explaining it, he is prohibited to have sex with his wife. Literally the activity of the bed. Like later on we'll learn Be'elam Megalchim in the Gemara Murad there it describes all the halachas of Avelis. That's where the Shulchan Aruch gets the halachas from the Gemara and Murad Kodesh. We'll hold this point, gentlemen, and we'll continue from here tomorrow. The 18th. Today we don't have all our Talmidim with us. We're going to learn something, chain of pace, the Sichtas Avos Rabbi Nosson, the sister tractate to the Pirkei Avos. The Pirkei Avos consists of five Mishnahs, 5 chapters of Mishnayos, and 1 chapter of Brises. This particular Sichta has 41 chapters, and it also discusses attitudes and ethics, Torah ethics and ethics. So it starts out very briefly on the first chapter. Moshe became sanctified in the cloud. Itzlu Torah Sinai, received the Torah from Sinai. And Emar, and I, there rested the honor of God upon Mount Sinai for Moshe to purify him. These were after the 10 Commandments were given, according to Rabbi Yossi Aguli. Remember, the 10 Commandments were given on scores. The cloud covered Moshe for 6 days, with the Ksiv, and then God called Moshe on the 7th day, the Tochanon from the midst of the cloud. Both covered Moshe, to give honor to Moshe. And through Moshe is coming the Torah, it says, here's where you have your Rabbi, August Rabbi Nosson, it's right here. Rabbi Nosson is disagreeing with Yossi Aguli, and he says, what's the reason that Moshe Rabbeinu was held for 6 days, below Sharash Olav Dibur, and there was no word of God talking to him for 6 days? in order that he be emptied of all traces of food and drink, that wasn't in his intestines, his cottage, until he became holy. Like a ministering angel also has no.
Was 6 days normally, or was that just the
No, that's by him. Mr. Bruner, before he came, said that usually it empties out earlier than that.
This is the real last trace.
Every last trace may take a little longer.
But that's a miracle.
There's a miracle, of course, that he could survive without eating or drinking at all. Which, of course, we understand. In heaven, you don't need to do that. In heaven, so yes. Overlay Rabbi alone. This in order to cause Moshe Rabbeinu to have a proper awe of God. You cannot quote
Yim, is that the same word as islands?
Yim means to be called awe. They say Kibo Olam, Kibik Torah, he received the word of the Torah, the Emo with fear, with Yira. Emo is also dread, the Yira is fear, the trembling, the Ziyah, sweating. In other words, if we understood fully the majestic presence of God, we would be fearful, we would be trembling all the time. It is perhaps a kindness of God that we are not that aware of it. Otherwise, we might be fearful, because in the presence of Almighty God, it is a tremendous experience. Shenamar, Ibnu Asad Hashem B'Yirah. We must serve God. Feeling, second chapter. To serve God with fear, with awe, Gilo B'Odo, and joy, also with a fear and trepidation, because this is something that you are dealing with Almighty God. You have to be very careful how you serve God. Your attitude must be right. Last year there was talked about an incident. There were two great gedolim, Rabbi, one was a student. Both of them were sitting and learning Torah, like Baruch Hashem we're doing now. Yossi went to go to a job to try to make a living.
Was that working?
No, Derek Harris here, the way of the world. No, it doesn't mean that. He's going to make a living.
So,
the Derek Harris meets here to go and try to make a living. He's got to go to the job. Choresh says, Rabbi, my teacher, how can you justify to forsake the word of the living God? There it is. We shut up the Derek Harris and to go and try to make a living. There it is. Rabbi, even though you're my Rabbi, my teacher, I'm your student. It's not good to forsake the word of the living God to go and make a living. You get it? These words you don't hear very often, gentlemen. You hear the other way around. And I want you to know you're in the palace of the king. And there we got it. That is the service of God. That is important. That's good. All these other things, now, I've been talking to you like that a long time. I want you to know where I get my information from. This is one of the sources. It says it right here. I'm not making it up proof. And they said, as long as these two were sitting and learning Torah, most that they were arguing with each other and fighting with each other like we do.
That's what kind of like jealousy.
I don't protect me. We do Baruch Hashem from time to time. We argue. I never stand on ceremony. Yeah, I told you a lot of times I disagree. Rabbi Chazal, I said this cannot be. I argue with Rashi sometimes from time to time. Doesn't mean Cholila, God forbid, that I question. I am greater than Rabbi Chazal, I'm greater than Rashi. God forbid, it doesn't come to my mind. We're trying to seek the emes of the Torah. And when we're looking for the emes, we're not standing on ceremony. You don't look about who is greater, who is smaller, but we're trying to find out what is the truth of the revelation of Torah. And there we set aside all this, and we argue, and we fight, as though it was really a death struggle. But God forbid, it's not a death struggle. It's a struggle for life. One day separated, and they had these arguments. Or of their youth.
So is it
important opinion, a subject matter. And there's a lot of ways of looking at it, and you argue it out. You really get a pleasure, tremendous pleasure, and it's been thoroughly investigating. I see, gentlemen, we can learn this. I don't want you to assume that we're just today. We'll learn it for a long time. Of course, it's Hashem, it's beautiful, and it's parallels almost that you're used to. You've gone over it a lot of times, so I don't want you to think that there's no more worlds to conquer. There's a lot to conquer, a lot to know. See, I got paid. See, well, you're hearing up this, sure, you learn a lot of things. You'll be amazed. Okay, you like it. Why did Moshe Nostra Torah Sinai? It says, "Vayikoslu al shnei luchos vodim," and he wrote them on the two tablets of stone. V'yitnam le'elai, and he gave them to me. The first tablets were sapphire from the sun. They were glass, white glasses and black glasses. And then they solidified. But this came from the sun. The first luchos came from the sun.
But gas about it. It's solidified? There was material.
Of course, and then when they gave it to Moshe, it was already solidified. He can't hold like gases.
No, he was right on that. No, it's like sunspots from this kind of hair. The sunspots are actually blinding light.
Lights can do anything. What do you ask a sailor? The religious can do anything. What's the problem? I have no problem with that at all.
And the second luchos
Yeah, also, but this was sapphire from Moshe's tent, and God said, tell them where it was, and you carve out the second luchos like the first, and I'll write the same words I wrote in the first luchos. And the chips were very valuable to Rashi.
I heard that no matter which way you turn around, the writing was still facing you.
Both miracles, yes.
Both of them? Even the second?
A miracle. Many things there, because Samach has nothing to hold it. The thing, and you can see it all the way around. What's that?
No, that fact that wherever you go around, you see exactly the same. What was there was some other things? We're talking about sound. There was no connection to it? I mean, they were drawn, the drums eventually? Or?
Rabbi said, this is in the
I want a list of the things I was thinking about Lucas. Did you know what that is? What? Did you know if there's a list anywhere?
Of course, it's very obvious.
Well, that was the 10 miracles done for them. That was this list of things about the Lucas themselves that were strange.
Very obvious. I've learned that with my Talmudim, and I will learn it again. You see, the wonderful part about teaching is that I can teach the same material over and over again. I get a new group and teach them over again. They think, oh, he must be a great genius. And never, I know sort of thing, and I know a lot. You see, just from the view of the whole. I'm telling you the this. And when you become knowledgeable, you say, well, you don't know so much. I said, I'm telling you that for years. You won't believe me. Okay, Moshe, Moshe given for Sinai, Kosmam, Shnei Luchos, Avonim, on the two tablets, Rai give to me. He said, these are the statutes, the rituals, and the Torahs. Both are, you cannot understand what the written Torah means unless you look at the oral, the Gemara, Medrash, and all the commentaries thereon. Son of Hashem that God gave Aliyah Moshe. The last pasuk has this pasuk, and here is a proof possible. The Torah should have sounded the Rabbi because there are two Torahs that are given, not just one. And nobody should make a mistake in assuming just one. You can't understand any of the mitzvahs of the Torah unless you look into the Torah of Abed, the Gemara, the Talmud. That explains it. The Torah that Moshe, the Rebbeinu gave to Israel, didn't give it only to Moshe. And they know, believe in Israel. He given them merited to become the agent between the two God. Both the ram, semen, and the oil that was used for anointing.
Was that the same? There was a special one that goes all the way down to the Hashmonai?
Here we have commentaries on that. On the Parshat Tzav. These are Masechtas Oryos. So there was a big miracle with them. This was dedicated the tabernacle and its vessels to Laban. All of this exists for the future to come. It will exist forever. Sure, I'm giving this explanation. You see these great authorities here is tremendous. Aaron and he anointed Aaron and one of the 7 days of when they became anointed to the priesthood. And so El Maluim would be the first 7 days. Moshe Rabbeinu acted as a Kohen Gadol, teaching his brother and his children how to do the avodah. And then later on, they took over after that. Different opinions about that. So Miluim is the dedication process. Only needs to fix up, fill up, give up. And from this oil that Moshe prepared, they would Abidolim, Malachim, and the kings of Israel. Eliezer was the second Kohen Gadol after his father passed away. Eliezer became the Kohen Gadol. Eliezer ben Aaron HaKohen. He burned him Thari. From them, the people coming mace become pure for generations. Chatos must be the Rebbe says, Gedola, great is this thing that we do for all generations.
Aaron brought up this concept. Aaron and his son became sanctified with this oil. The Dashto of Son of God. Yeshua, you find down as peril in Yom. Yeshua Kibbutz Moshe. Yeshua received the Torah from Moshe. Give from your glory of Israel, in order that all the congregation of children of Israel will listen to Yeshua. And the elders received the Torah from Yeshua. Not only became the leader of these people, the best students of Moshe.